Nice.
What a beautiful Friday to be talking to you, sir.
I appreciate the invite, man. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I have seen you from afar, some of the classes that you have been teaching there with your company. We're going to talk to in just a minute. But before I get into that, I want to talk about the American Warrior Society. In these crazy times, man, if you're out there and you're hearing Ak and I this morning, you've considered keeping you and your family safer, I highly encourage you to take advantage of our video content. Take a free 14-day test drive on Mr. Mike Seeklander and I. We got everything from white belt to blue belt, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, preparedness series. We've got Dr. Dan Olesnicki teaching you trauma medicine. We've got Edge Weapons with Mike Janich. We've got Christian Dare teaching combatives. Jason Kelly, American top team wrestler, teaching some combatives as well. Everything and anything you ever want to know about rifle, handgun, shotgun, low light, it is in the training vault. Please take advantage of that. Here's Will Rhodes, one of our coin members. He is coin number 2269. My good friend, Mr. Will Parker out there in Montana. He is coin number 800. Thanks for joining us. I want to talk about a couple of books real quick. No Safe Alternative, Improving How We Teach Cops to Kill, written by my good friend, Dr. T.C. Fuller, retired FBI agent. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my amazing memoir as well on violence and varietals, Confessions of a Savage Psalm. You want to pick up that and get a discount code, please click on the links in today's show notes as well. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Great. How are you?
Yeah, good, man. Sorry, I got to plug everything, brother. Got to keep the lights on around here.
Man, do what you got to do, man. It's good stuff anyway. In fact, that T.C. Fuller book I just bought. It's great stuff. I'm buying yours too, man. Good stuff.
Yeah, thank you. I'll send you a copy. I tell you what, don't save your coin, brother. I will send you a copy for coming on the show today.
Appreciate that, man. Thank you.
John Shriver is on out there in Yukon, Oklahoma. He is coin number 1919. Jay Fujimoto out in Hawaii, coin number 188. Please like and hit that share button. I am very honored to have Ak on today. Ak is the founder and lead instructor of Citizen Safe Academy, a firearms training company in Middle Tennessee, a fellow Tennessean. His background as a firearms instructor started at age 12, teaching youth in his father's gun club. He followed in his father's footsteps, becoming both a police officer and a firearms instructor at the age of 22. He has been training civilians for over 30 years and training law enforcement for about 25. Ak considers himself a senior student and has many hours of training with some of the best in the civilian firearms training biz. He is currently a staff instructor at Rangemaster Firearms Training Services under his mentor, Mr. Tom Givens. Good morning, Ak.
Good morning, brother.
How did you link up with Tom?
That's a good story. I so left Buffalo, New York, retired early, came down to America.
Yeah.
And when I got here, I was doing a little government work. Doing firearms training for a couple government agencies, and a couple of the guys on the contracts were like, "Hey, man, we like our wives to take a permit class from you and stuff." So I looked around to see where I could get signed up for a permit, to become a permit instructor for the state of Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And I remember one of the other trainers came to me, he said, "Hey, you can go here. He said, you can go to this place down in Rangemaster in Memphis, but you got to be careful because you can fail that one." I was like, "Oh, that's the one I want to go to." And I'd heard about Tom, because I was a bit of a training junkie at that point. I spent a lot of time at Tactical Defense Institute with John Benner and was kind of going around, trying to connect what I was teaching and learning back to Colonel Cooper if possible. So when that came up, I said, "Man, let me go down here." So I went down and took, that was like 2008 or 9. I took the Rangemaster Instructor Development course. And it's funny because there was some people in the industry now that I didn't know at the time, one of them being Kathy Jackson, who had a profound effect on, what I did after that. She was in that class and a couple other guys, and didn't really know. And after I fell in love with it then and been following Tom ever since. So.
All right. Speaking of Dr. Fuller, he is on. We were just plugging your book, sir. And Ak says he picked up a copy. So there you go. Look at that.
Definitely.
The marketing's working. So you mentioned coming down here to one of the free states, if you will, sir.
Yes, sir.
And so were you born and raised in Buffalo, New York?
I was, actually. Okay. Born and raised in Buffalo. My dad was a reserve cop because back then, you made more money working in the plants than you did, as a police officer. So a lot of guys worked in the plants and moonlighted as, you take a second job to pay bills as a police officer,
Yeah.
So
it's kind of still that way today, isn't it?
Some places, most definitely. So he, but what he would do is he would also, guys who couldn't pass the qual, he would help them out. And so when I got on later, some of those guys, my name's Aqil Qadir, and guys like, hey Aqil, I know your dad, and I got on the department and actually got some love from guys because my dad had actually helped him keep the job, you know,
Mm.
and so but yeah, grew up there, and it was tough, being gun guys in New York, as I'm sure you can in New York State, so you can imagine, um, and you finally just got sick of it, and the cold didn't help too, so I said let me go where there's people who were more like-minded, when it
Yes.
comes to this Second Amendment and other things, and pick Tennessee and love it. Been here since been here for 15 years now, 15, 16 years now. I love it.
Yeah, well, we're glad to have you, sir, and hopefully Tennessee keeps getting people like you because we need them, man. What does your bio overlook? So you were a cop in Buffalo. You've been training with Tom and teaching for Tom on the road, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment. But what else does your bio overlook, sir?
Really, just when I was a police officer, I did I did SWAT thing for a short stint, and then I did I was a detective for half that time, and that's where I really got I was kind of helping my dad with. He used to have a club where he took inner city youth to this rural areas during the summer so that they could see something other than the projects and try to expand their minds. And so that's where I started teaching with him there. So he said, hey, I'm a youth group and we're going to do some shooting, which I had done with him growing up, so it wasn't new to me. But he was like, hey, I need you to start teaching these kids. So I actually have a picture on my website of me at 14 years old doing that very thing. um, so I would help him do that. And he also did permit classes. Where we were, it took a year and a half to get a permit.
Wow.
With the Sullivan law, in New York State, you couldn't touch a gun until you touch a pistol. You can touch a rifle or a shotgun, but you couldn't touch a pistol until you got a permit. So my dad would kind of help people, in our community trying to get, guns, because a lot of the community we grew up in was, rife with crime,
Yeah.
And so my dad would always tell me, he said, this guns are a hedge against tyranny, all types of tyranny, including one of those tyrannies are the tyranny of the criminal element,
Hmm.
and so anybody who knows anything about the neighborhood, the hood, most of the people are good people. You know what I'm saying? And all it takes is a few knuckleheads to keep everybody in rough shape. So my dad was always working against that. And I helped him, and then that just put me right into um, became an NRA instructor in '92. That was the same year I went to the police academy. And as soon as I got out, the police came in. Waited a year. You had to wait till you got off probation. So once I got off my probationary period, then I went back to the police academy trying to help out as a firearms instructor. And that's where I learned the apprenticeship approach to becoming a firearms instructor. Coming from my dad, working with him, and then, you go to the police academy. And they didn't just let you just start talking to people. First you had
Right.
to get coffee for the senior guys and sweep grass and hang targets and and do the gopher stuff. I'm glad they did it that way, because I got to watch how they did it, and learn from that. And that carried on to when I went to Tactical Defense Institute. Well, what happened was I got into some off-duty scrapes with a firearm.
Oh, really? Tell me about that.
Yeah, pick up football game in a park one time, and the other time was in a Kmart parking lot. Where because like I said, I grew up in a rough area, so guns came out. Things didn't happen like television. And even though I was considered myself to be one of the better shots in the Buffalo Police Department, I said, hey, I got to get better. And the internet was young, and I remember looking up Tactical Defense Institute in East and down in with John Benner and those guys down in Ohio, and put the money together, paid for it, drove down, and that guy was so nice to me. I fell in love and
Hmm.
became a training junkie after that. So coming back, trying to bring what I was learning there, bring it back home, and teach other people, and that's kind of like the trajectory how it started with me to this day, really.
Wow. Lot to unpack there, man. I want to welcome some folks on. Tony is on down in Georgia. Doug is on. He is coin number 78. He's a patrol lieutenant up in Ohio. Ted Leonard is on in Mississippi. Steve Miller says, good morning, Rich and Uck. Coin number 1536 from Missouri. Don Bothwell on from Montana. Donald Green from occupied Virginia. Uh, Will Parker says, oh my God, my training junkie brother is here. Doug says, I have done quite a bit of training at TDI. John Brenner and his crew are top notch. Yeah, I've never trained with them, but everything I've seen that they put out, I kind of like it. So thank you to the 17 folks watching us live. Please like and hit that share button. Ak and I are just getting going. Ak, I want to talk to you. So you've been teaching since I think 12, got some photos of you teaching at 14 under the tutelage of your father at that time. What, in your opinion, makes a great instructor, sir?
Patience, um, patience, and getting away with getting away from the ego. That's the biggest deal. Is I'm trying to remember, especially for a guy like me who grew up doing it. Sometimes it's hard to relate to people who've never done it before, and so that's what Citizen Safety Academy. We have an instructor development program now, and it's about getting instructors to you know remember what it was like, or even if they didn't have it, remember what somebody that you cared about was like when they were afraid of a gun, not knowing what to do with it, not sure, developing a rapport with your students, and encouraging them to what keep going, because that's what it's about. So our biggest thing is we want to be stewards, great stewards, and welcoming people to the Second Amendment movement.
Yeah.
Now, the Second Amendment way of life, the Second Amendment thoughts, what I'm saying, freedom, all that type of stuff. But
Mhm.
if we're mean and we're gatekeepers and we look down on people, then that turns them away. And so we want to make sure that we're welcoming. I think that's we have to see ourselves not only just teaching them something, but as trying to bring them into a certain way of life and a certain way of thinking. My goal is to make sure anybody who deals with me, they may not, you know, become what I am, because everybody doesn't care like I do. And I'm kind of, I'm a nerd about this stuff. I'm into it,
Mhm.
but at least they won't, I want to bash the stereotypes that they have about gun people and about firearms themselves. So,
Yes. No, I love all that, man. I think you said patience, and being a good brand ambassador, I think, is important. If the brand is the Second Amendment, or the two-way community, or the gun community, or the tactical community, whatever the heck we want to call it, people that are in your mine and your line of work, I think we need to be good ambassadors because we can really turn people off. We're already dealing with something that's scary. A lot that
yes,
people have a gross misunderstanding about what it is and what we
yes,
do.
yes,
And the more that we can do that and bring people in the fold, have I always lived up to those ideals? Probably not. I'm embarrassed to say in my 20s and stuff like that, but I'm obviously 54 and a little bit more gray in my hair there, Ak, and in the beard as well. But I love what you said, man, and I agree with you. Now, how do we do that though? I mean, it's easier said than done, right? How do we do that?
stay a student, man. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? And I remind instructors that if you're the baddest guy in the room, you know you need a new room. Nothing
Right.
keeps me more humble than running around with a guy like Tom Gibbons. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? And that, just watching him, and I can imagine him going to gun sight, what I'm saying, with the giants of the industry, be around guys like him, Masad Ayub, you know,
Hmm.
um, heck, Mike Seeklander, you know what I'm saying? There's guys who,
Hmm.
keep these guys in mind, and don't let your head get too big, and keep studying, you know what I'm saying? And work hard to I do, we have our Rangemaster instructor reunion every year with Tom, and I do a block called They Ain't You. And what that is just to remind guys that you've come a long way, and it doesn't take much from where, once you get a certain level of skill, there's a wide canyon between you and the average shooter and the average person's understanding of firearms. And don't forget
Hmm.
that when you're dealing with people,
Yeah.
don't assume they understand even the same language that you're using, for example.
Exactly. The great Phil Strader is on. He says, Mike Seeklander, who's that? Boo. Oh, I love nothing more than watching Mike and Phil beat the living crap out of each other back in the day at USAA and stuff. Great stuff. Glad to have you on, Phil. Hope you're doing well, brother. Doug says 100% need to be a lifelong student. If you are always the best in the room, then you will not progress, but actually regress. And that is true. Your skills and abilities will fall to that lowest person in that room. So I agree with you. I'll keep pushing, keep striving. And so, Citizen Safety Academy, what made you hang out a shingle as a professional full time instructor? And who are you catering your classes to? What kind of stuff you teach? And please, sir, take it wherever you like.
So, Citizen Safety Academy it came out of me being a cop and realizing that we got there too late. And when I was at the time when I got on in Buffalo, it was the crack 90s. When I
Mhm.
got to my precinct, back when Buffalo had precincts, man, that precinct had 40 homicides that year. You know what I'm saying?
Damn.
And what I realized that we ran a lot of crime, and Buffalo's only, I don't know, 40, 50 square miles, not a big town, you know what I'm saying? And
Right.
as far as it goes up, not out. And so I said, let me, our response times weren't too bad, but even with that, 4 or 5 minutes, we were still there too late. And I realized that, people were their own first responder. And, how do I train them? How do I get the message to them, especially people who, have this cognitive dissonance with, um, the police will be there, and when I push this 911, they'll just appear, and it doesn't happen like that, and they know that it doesn't happen like that. Um, the whole thing with citizen safety. When I left Buffalo, got to Tennessee, and people were asking me actually to train. I said, hey, came up with a name, that kind of thing, and then so I do, like a lot of guys, they, all right, I'm going to teach people how to shoot, and then there's like, if you train Rich, shooting community is small. Like I said,
Mhm.
Tom laughs when people say it's an industry. It's actually a community. You know what I'm saying? Because you
Mhm.
take enough classes, you start seeing the same people, and I said, okay, what do I do? What niche in this thing can I get into that's not being addressed? And it was a conversation I had with Kathy Jackson at TagCon one year, and I said, you know what? I think that like, for example, we would complain about NRA instructors and how they weren't, the best quality or didn't do the job really well. And so me and my girl Tiff Johnson, I run pretty tight with Tiffany Johnson, who's also a
Mhm.
Rangemaster. She's been with Tom since she was a pup,
Mhm.
and we hooked up, and we said, hey, what are we going to do? And I said, hey, let's turn towards, you know, instead of fighting over the same, however many hundreds of thousands of people in this industry, why don't we go out and start grabbing some of those 300 million Americans out there and bring them into this thing?
Yeah.
So how do we do that better? And so we went back and became ranked NRA training counselors. And so we started running our own NRA courses, pistol courses, and ours are different. Meaning the thing is okay, you are a gateway instructor. This is how you approach that. And we start teaching things that other courses wouldn't. For example, we teach the course, and at the end of the course, we'd have an addendum after the course is over where we would teach them how to run a line, you
Mhm.
know, because you and I picked that up, being in mail or being in law enforcement circles, but where do civilian instructors get that kind of stuff?
Right.
And once you got more than one person, you've essentially got a line, so how do you do that safely, especially with new shooters, things like that.
Mhm.
So that evolved into our gateway instruction program, which is now became a gateway certification program because people kept saying, hey, will I be certified? I'm like, well,
Mhm.
okay, cool. For marketing reasons, it's a certification program, but it's teaching people those nuances. And I'm a gun guy, raised in it. You were military. Tiff came up scared of guns, walked into Rangemaster, 24 years ago or whatever, looking to argue for gun control, and ran into Tom Givens teaching a permit class. And so the whole
I
thing
did
is,
not know that about Tiffany.
yeah. And so what Kathy Jackson said was the best instructor should teach the new people, and
Mhm.
that there is the epitome of that. And had she went across the street or across Memphis to another place, we may not have her doing all these wonderful things she's doing for our community.
Yeah.
So
I need to get her on here, man. You got to hook me up with Tiffany.
man, I'll take care of that.
Yeah,
She's
appreciate
wonderful.
it.
Yeah, she's
Yeah,
something
she is.
special, man.
Now, does
Yeah.
she co-facilitate with you, Ak?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Me and
Perfect.
her work together pretty seriously on this stuff. And as far as Rangemaster, because we're both, staff instructors and
Mhm.
TACCOM and all that stuff. So we work pretty closely on everything. She's literally like my sister. So
Good. Alan Kelly says, good morning. Coin number 1571 from occupied Virginia. Alan Kelly spent more than 30 years as a Virginia State police officer. Good to have you on this morning, sir. Steve Miller says, I drove 7 hours to take their NRA instructor course. Absolutely worth it. So there's a great endorsement right
appreciate
there.
that, Steve. Thank you, man.
So Citizen Safety Academy, it's interesting, but I want to talk to you about what you're doing with Tom Givens. I mean, you're on the road for him teaching his combat pistol class. Tell me about that, and why are you doing that for him?
Well, so Tom does his instructor development course. He used to do a combative pistol course and another an intensive pistol that he used to do some years ago. But with the surge in requests for the IDC, he's going around, he's primarily doing that. Now, what I end up getting, because I'm staff, is a lot of people would call me and go, hey, I want to get ready for this IDC. How can you help me? And so I would often help instructors prepare for it. And one of the first bits of advice I would give them was take the combative pistol course, because I believe the instructor development course is to teach you how to teach that class. And so I would say you need to take that class first to see his TTPs, to see how he, his tactics, techniques, and procedures, to see his pace, to see, what drills he uses, that kind of thing. And problem was, Tom was only doing that class like once a year in Florida. What I'm saying? So I would, every year I would go down to Florida and study how he was teaching it. I'm saying? What his timing, what drills, why, what did he did here and that and the other. And so I did that several times. And so I was putting together, I put together a class called Pro Social Pistol, which is a, homage to my brother, John Hearn, and, the pro social use of statutory violence. And that was going to be my version to get people ready for the IDC. And so I was going around, doing a couple of them just so I could, smooth out the timing, because timing is a big thing, what I'm saying? And one of the biggest challenges for shooters and instructors is, timing, time management. So getting things down smooth, seeing how the ground counts went. And I was doing one in Alabama, and he called me and he said, "What you doing?" And I said, "Hey, sir, I'm doing my version of your class." And he said, "You know what? Do mine." And when the man shakes the can, the cream rise to the top. So yes, right. So, yes, sir. Yes, sir. You know what I'm saying? And and next thing I know, we had 10 dates on, and got out there and tried to do my best with him. And he's happy, so I'm happy. The customer's happy and Tom's happy, I'm happy. So but it's a great class. We have a ball in it. And what I love about it is that it's a bit of a gateway fighting pistol class in this regard. It's half classroom, half range both days. And what it focuses on, just as much as the skills, it focuses on the mindset. And very few people are as good at mindset as Tom Gibbons.
Okay, let's unpack that, man. Let's unpack mindset real quick. Ak, tell me about it.
We in this class, all of the skills and all of the gear won't do you any good if you don't have the proper mindset. I mean, you're a warrior, and you understand that. There's a guy who has the latest, greatest whiz bang 3000, but he doesn't have the proper mindset. You got a guy with the right mindset. He's got a ballpoint pen. You're taking that guy. You're taking the fighter, taking the guy who's got the proper head to be able to do the type of violence that needs to be done. You know what I'm saying? To save you and save your family. And so the issue that a lot of good people have is that they're good people. You know what I'm saying? And they don't live the kind of lives that would make them prone to violence and prone to the type of violence that you need to do to get off of the defensive and actually attack or counterattack your attacker. And so the goal of this is, how do we get them to start processing information? Because training is to teach you how to practice. Training is to teach you what you need to do to get yourself ready, because you're not going to anchor it in that class. And so what we want to do is introduce, first of all, give people permission to defend themselves, and then tell them this is what you need to do to get your head right. And this is the way you need to think about things, start thinking about things, and give yourself an honest assessment of your headset to make sure that you're even capable of. Because if you don't think about it and you haven't made those pre-planned decisions, then you won't even reach for your firearm, for example, or reach for whatever defensive tool you decide to use. So with that first thing, there's a big part of the mindset is avoidance. Obviously, first we teach you how to avoid it if at all possible, and then we teach you, if you can't avoid it, how to win it, and how to win it in a way that doesn't compromise you in the courts. So that you win the fight after the fight, which is dealing with the court system and laws that all 50 states have. So
yeah, and you and I live in a place where it's relatively favorable. If a good guy used to self-defense is going to be much more favorable down here, whereas maybe in New York or where you're from, Ak, or somewhere else in this country, it's not going to be looked upon favorably. So you got to dot all the I's and cross all the T's, or you're going to lose that second fight. Man, that's the fight I don't want to lose.
You make a good point. And I bring a guy along with me. He comes and he's my AI. His name is Howard Marbury, Esquire. And Howard Marbury was one of the lead prosecutors in Dade County, Miami, for many years. And he's a gun guy. But he comes along with me, and he has a different approach to the whole legal thing. His thing is all legal is local. And he does a presentation for me during the lunch break, where he teaches people how to figure out the climate that they're living in.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Who you should know, what you should do, so that because the legal lecture in California and New York is different than the legal lecture in Texas. You know what I'm saying?
100%.
And so his thing is to teach you how to go about figuring those things out, so that you know where you are, what your diligence should be like as regards to carrying a gun and possibly using it. How to look these things up, what jury instructions are. He takes a different approach that I hadn't seen before. And so it was so good when I heard it. I was like, listen, bro, you got to come on the road with me, man, and teach this.
Yeah, Andrew Bronco, a good friend of mine and Mike's, wrote the book, The Law of Self-Defense. And
Good book.
yeah, it is a good book. But John Hearn and I were talking about this. Your brother from another mother, Mr. John Hearn, and I were talking about this recently, this idea that I think he was talking about Atlanta as the example. And he said, one jurisdiction to the next is the difference between you being awarded like the key to the city and a hero and spending the rest of your life in prison. I mean, it's just, it's crazy. And I interviewed a gentleman from South Africa recently, and they can't even fathom that kind of idea, that the micro terrain here in the United States, the little jurisdictional nuances. And I love the way your friend says that all legal is local. That's a fact. You and I know that policing in rural East Tennessee and Buffalo, New York, man, is different.
Completely different. My son's a cop here in Murfreesboro.
Is not true.
Yeah, my son's a cop here in Murfreesboro, and I look at how his policing compared to what I did in Buffalo is completely different in a lot of ways. I'm like, wow.
It's a different time too, right?
Yeah, he's doing a little more police work. We were just like, cuffing him and booking him, where he's actually out there doing a little bit more of it. So, but yeah, you're right, 100%. Your local sheriff, what I'm saying, as opposed to your commissioner, and what the difference is. For example, Davidson County and Shelby County in Tennessee are, different as opposed to the rest of Tennessee. You know what I'm saying? I mean, so it's. You need to know that and take that into consideration when you're making lethal use of force decisions.
Yeah, I was, from Knoxville, but I lived in Memphis for years. And when I was a recruiter instructor, I would go down to Memphis and all the inner city schools. I don't know why they despite pace into some of the schools. It wasn't always, but hey, people are people, man. You show people respect and they tend to respond well. Very true. Those that don't, man, we got another thing to deal with that too, right, Aq?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Doug says rogue prosecutors not living up to their oaths of office have made what? Legal, local. Okay. This is why we are seeing activist prosecutors refusing to prosecute certain crimes. And that is a problem. When we have a two-tiered justice system in America, like we seem to be, it tends to be growing, I would imagine. It's going to create problems down the road, man. Johnny King says, good morning from Kentucky, gentlemen. Good morning, Johnny. Glad to have you on the show.
He's right. We just need to be proactive. I mean, I remember something Lee Weems said in the podcast one time that struck me, and I agree with him. He says, he's the sheriff, and if the people don't like him or the local prosecutor, they can vote him out. Mm-hmm. Not so in big cities, and so I've decided that, from here out where I live, I want to be able to elect my highest local law enforcement officer and prosecutor. That way they are more beholden to you than they are to the politicians that put them in places like, in large metropolitan areas, for example.
Yeah. Gerald is on. He is up there in Oregon, coin number 952. Good morning, Gerald. Thank you to the 20 folks watching us live and to everyone that's going to be listening in the podcast in the days and weeks to come. I want you to go ahead and rate our podcast. I haven't asked for that in a long time. Please do that. This is the 10th year. Actually, February of 2014 is when we started the show. And Aq, I think you're the first person, in February. So 10 years.
Awesome.
Took a long time to get you on the show, man. I can do something about that.
Finally here,
man. Tony says, anyone paying attention to the Jennifer Crumley trial? I am a little bit peripherally. Are you familiar with this one, Aq?
A little bit. I think, is that the one the guy he was in the car and there was a car accident or something? I don't know, but I haven't been paying attention.
I think this is the one that they bought a firearm for their son or something like that. He used it for a school shooting. Tony, tell me if I'm right on that.
If that's the case, that's scary.
Yeah, very scary. But
that's scary.
Just a stuff I'm hearing about that, it seems they
Yeah,
made
the one in
they
Michigan, I think that is. Yeah,
yeah.
that's that one. Yeah, that's yeah.
Let's talk about John Hearn for a minute. What does his crime sets mean to you, and how do you train and prepare people today based on what he's teaching?
Biggest thing with that for me is just to let people know that sometimes where they live, there's an well nationwide and sometimes locally, there's an attempt to dumb down those numbers so that people can get a much clearer picture of their risk profile wherever they live. And so I don't leave it up to crime stats. The crime stats can be jigged, and they're not necessarily what's really going on. For example, in my classes, in gateway classes, we explain, that there used to be something called attempted murder, and now explain to them what aggravated assault with a weapon is. And even if you just pull up, you know, Davidson County, at Metro PD's website with their crime stats and explain them, look at this here. We've only got 150 homicides, but we've got 3,000 aggravated assault with a weapon every year, so that people can understand and be a little more educated when they look at those stats to see what they really mean. And so there's a lot of crime that's being hidden, and chambers of commerce and things like that have a vested interest in that. And so um, Tom has been talking about that for years, and John Hearn, God bless him, has been taking a lot of Tom's stuff in that regard to the next level. I mean, that dude is. I've been watching his Who Wins and Who Loses thing for years. When it was a presentation at TICON, and ended up being an 8-hour presentation at TICON. I think at one point I sat through the whole thing because it's absolutely smoking.
It is smoking, man. He's doing good stuff, and I think he's not only taken Tom's content to the next level. He's taken seems to be standing on William April's shoulders and
Oh,
taking
he's got a
some.
lot of stuff. Yeah,
Yeah,
his technical anatomy class. We were both in Doc's class when he brought it back to Meade Hall in Oklahoma last year, and he took that stuff and he added it to his class, and even before then he had a lot of that. He had been already studying that kind of thing. But John's a genius, and he's breaking ground on a lot of good stuff and bringing very, very valuable stuff, especially to us instructors. I think instructors should listen to that because it helps you able to explain it to people who won't necessarily see or hear John Hearn, but this is the kind of stuff I like to sprinkle in mine and tell people, okay, if you're going to go to the next level, okay, what do I do after a combative pistol? You should be going to John Hearn's class. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, and let's talk about that real quick, just for the example of, we'll say, the tactical anatomy class. So everybody, instructors out there, like, yeah, I got a high thoracic shot, blah blah blah. Okay, it's more than that, and it's the three-dimensional shooting aspect. So if you're a hunter, I had a doe walk out the other day, and the angle on the shot was going to be wrong,
Mm-hmm.
so I didn't shoot, and it's like,
Right,
okay,
right,
I just didn't get the right angle
right.
to make sure I could put this animal down. So I say that because I think instructors, we get sucked into the two-dimensional range mentality, flat range. There's nothing wrong with the flat range. I've been teaching on a flat range for 30 plus years. What
Right.
I'm saying is you got to think about the three-dimensional problem, right? This is a 360 problem. And I've had my buddy Todd Fox on here, who's been in executive protection for a long, long time. And he talks about, it's 360 this way and 360 this way, threats from above, threats from below. What say you on that one, Hawk?
100%. And people don't stand still. And they move and things like that. And that, the blood vessels from that mediastinal area get smaller as they go out further. Could get out into the chest and things. And so the area that if you need incapacitation quickly, the area that you need to hit on a human being is rather small. And like you said, and then if we start to move that person around, then now you've got an arm between you and them. And one thing that we learned in that class, for example, was that the heart sits, forward in the chest. So, you may be thinking that you got a good angle if the person's bladed to you or something like that. And then if you're not sure and you place it in the wrong spot, you may have to keep shooting, which wastes time. And the one thing you don't have, in the gunfight, according, by my mentor, is time.
Mhm.
So yeah, shooting two-dimensional targets in a three-dimensional world is something that we should try to expose, our students to. As well as another thing John does really well is that whole cognitive thing, the effect of processing the information, incoming information while you doing that. Is something that we should at least be introducing some of our students to as they go along. And how do you do that? So
Well, and I know that I knew that you got that piece of it, Ak, when you were talking a little while ago. You were talking about the idea of, these pre-programmed things, these lines in the sand, red line. I can't remember exactly what your phraseology was, Ak, but that told me, you get it, because you want to free up that mental bandwidth to make those decisions as fast as you can. And if this is your first rodeo, yeah,
No,
you're going to be behind the power curve for a
right.
while. And that's the thing about former cops like you or I, we're out there teaching defensive firearms usage or fighting with a handgun. Well, the context with which you and I may have applied force as a Leo is different from that soccer mom, right? Uh,
Yes.
Contextually, she's not there to make an arrest. She does have the ability through
Right.
awareness and avoidance to leave the scene, whereas you and I are duty bound to be there. So, how did you, as a former cop, dad was a cop, so you just grew up with that mindset. How did you change that mindset in order to teach civilians?
Trying to see it from their perspective, because even us gun guys, we got and guys cops, we've got people in our families who aren't and who are very much against it. So I said, okay, how do I teach my grandmother this kind of stuff? You know what I'm saying? And one thing I learned, for example, I went to gun sight this past fall. I took 250 and had a ball, and I was fortunate enough to get Jerry McCown as my Rangemaster. So I was elated, I
Mhm.
wanted one of the OGs. But one thing that I learned after watching Cooper teach that again is the aspects of the Cooper color codes. There was two things going on. One was situational awareness. The other part was lowering the mental barrier to being able to do the ruthless kind of violence you need to do to stop an attack quickly. And so people just need what William April. People just need a parking space for that in their head. And so I believe our job is to start introducing that stuff, not in a rough, violent way, but start easing people into that slowly by introducing those concepts and getting them to just get to start thinking about it. You and I, when we're on patrol or when you're doing what you have to do, you get in situations that put you in a situation where you have to think about those things, because
Mhm.
we actually have to go into violence. If there's something going over there, everybody else is running away from it. What our job is to do is go in that direction. And so,
Correct.
you get into certain situations where that you realize that's the job. And so you have to start thinking like that. Soccer moms don't, you know what I'm saying? And
Mhm.
so their ramp up, we have to teach them how to see it first, be sooner, you know what I'm saying? And then ramp up quickly. And the way we do that is with dress rehearsals. And that's what training essentially is, you know what I'm saying? And gives you a chance to see if you're even capable of it. And if you are, then how do you do it?
Okay, so you're talking about dress rehearsals, man. I think that opens a door, for force on force. So, how do you know? Obviously, this is something some instructors get wrong. I see it rarely, but I do see it from time to time, and that is they put that soccer mom in that level of stress without the requisite skills and abilities to win in that environment. So, how do you know if someone is prepared for force on force? Is there you can run a bill drill this fast, or you can do X drill and X time, and then okay, now you're ready for that level of stress with force on force? How do you do that?
I think that if you can, and if you have the resources that you would, there's a stopgap where you would maybe even with cert guns or something like that, where it's just scenario based training. So one of the things that we would do is before we would have them actually go into force on force, we would set up the room with the photorealistic targets. So one of the things we do at the end of combative pistol is have people shoot at a photorealistic target. So
Mhm.
that first of all, they're putting sights or optic on something that looks like a human being. And then
Mhm.
that's a stage. Then after that, now, okay, now here we're going to go in this room per se. And then you got these photorealistic, some of them holding cans of soda, some of them may be holding a gun. And now you got to go and do that thing. Okay. And if they're able to do that and get their heads around that, and they got pretty decent marksmanship. They don't need to have, 2-second bill drill marksmanship. They got pretty decent marksmanship. And more importantly, solid automatic gun handling, because that's where we see it fall apart. Then maybe we can introduce them into some light force on force, because most good force on force, like Craig Douglas says, it should have some no shoot wins. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's force on
Yeah.
force is about decision making more than it is about shooting. You know what I'm saying? And so easing people into those things in a way that makes it so that they don't have a mental crash if things go bad. Just as important is good. So you have to have good force on force, good practitioners who do it right and don't,
Hmm.
ham on people and things like that. And then just as important, and this is I saw the master doing it. William April was a master debriefer after force on force, because he
Yeah.
had a way of watching people do things and asking questions. Why did you do this? And so people can find out who you are with a gun in your hand.
Yeah, that's great, man. we bring out Dr. Fuller when we do warrior camp, and after their force on force kind of stuff, he'll debrief them as if he was an FBI, an FBI agent when he was on the job. And it's really interesting to watch because everybody's sitting there watching this person kind of like explain what he did or did not do, or she did or did not do. And Johnny King says, Tom Givens says you have to give people the permission to turn violent. Yes. And that is true. Guy was on from the Philippines.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
and we're gonna
show them out. Yes,
man, me and you are going to unpack that. I love where your head's at there, brother. Guy was on from the Philippines. Sarah May is on. She says, "Good morning from the shores of Lake Superior. Glad to have you on, ma'am. Guys and gals out there, me and Aqil are just getting going. Please like and hit that share button." So let's talk about that, because having written a book on violence and varietals, I got to plug it again. My life has been all about the lawful application of violence. I have no problem in it, been to combat, used it, everything from a harsh word to dropping bombs on dudes. I got no problem with it. But I think, and I'm sure you don't either. So, but not everybody's hardwired the way we perhaps are, Ox. So how do we do it, man? How do we give them permission to turn violent, empower them so that they know there's a time and a place for that lawful application of force, and then teach them how to do it, man?
First, explain to them the layout, see what they have and what their options are, dispel some of the myths, for example, that, police will be there to save them, have them understand the seriousness of what they're dealing with, and give them a true risk assessment, show them how to avoid it if at all possible. And then if not, explain to them and test and see if they have the ability. And not everybody does. It's funny. I went and got my teeth cleaned 2 days ago, and my dental hygienist was like, they find out, hey, what do you do for a living? I teach conflict resolution. They keep asking, and then it turns out, fine, as instructor, okay, I got a gun, but I don't know if I could, point it at people and this and that and the other. And one of the things that I try to tell them is that, it happens when it happens and how it happens. But one thing that you can do to even create parking spaces in your head for the type of violence that might be necessary is we have something that we didn't have when you were young: surveillance video. I'm saying this is like an inoculation. And that's right. When I say an inoculation, if I was going to inoculate you from a disease, I would take a weakened version of it, shoot it in your body, and then you develop the antibodies. So with violence inoculation, you can look at surveillance video of things happening, and then a show like John Korea's Active Self-Protection, where he actually breaks down how you can avoid, how you can defeat, how you can, that type of thing, so people can even see and create those spaces in their head for what they have to be able to do. Then after that, it's about pre-planned decisions, along the way, checking to make sure that they are capable. Because believe it or not, you and I know everybody's not capable. It's just right. That's just that way. But it's seeing what those triggers may be or what they need to understand for them to get to that point, and give them the tools and once they realize where they can and can't be. But further training and further exposure is the biggest thing, because, although I came up pretty rough, when me coming out in the street as a rookie cop, and by the time I was 3 years seasoned where I was a different guy, because just of the things that I had seen, and realizing that I had to change to adapt. And people are adaptable once they understand that it's something that they have to do. So
let's unpack some of the stuff. So back when you and I were cops in the 90s, early 90s, we had, I think there was like 2 police officers getting shot and killed that was on video at the time. The Trooper Mark Coates in South Carolina, and you had Constable Lunsford right down in Texas. Right. And I remember just watching them over and over again, because you just didn't have access to all the stuff we have now. So I think that it's a much better playing field now. You can see what real violence looks like. I'll give you another example. I used to teach edge weapons when I was a DT instructor, and we just didn't have any stabbings caught on film at the time. There's almost none. And somebody gave me a copy of a stabbing in a Texas correctional facility. It was the Barfield incident, and it validated what I had assumed, but until I saw it, I couldn't say what really was happening. So thank God for the stuff that we have now. Thank God for what my good friend John Korea is doing over there at Active Self-Protection, man. Because you're the ability to expose yourself to that. And now people don't want to look at it, but I do have faith in the folks that come to your classes, you and Tiffany and Tom and all the other folks out there teaching the good stuff, is they're taking the right step, and maybe in putting their hard-earned money down, they're ready to to go to that space.
Yes. And if they show up, then I think it's our job to guide them and show them how to, because like I said, it's not done in that weekend. We show you how to do the work, and then you go forth and you do that work. So that's what that's about.
Yeah. Chuck Renfro is on, says, good morning. Have a blessed day from Texas. Guile in the Philippines says, always happy to join you all, Rich. I learned a lot from you guys. Well, I think in our community, we learn from each other, you know,
I really
um,
do.
and that, you know, iron sharpens iron, man. And that's what we try to do with the show is bring on different guys and gals that approach what we do in our community from maybe a slightly different angle and have the conversations that are going to keep people safer. So it's been a blessing to do this, man, and get to talk to people like you, Ak, and spread the good word. One of the things you mentioned earlier, you talked about drills. You said, you know, when you were mentoring under Tom and kind of watching what he does and the drills he does and why he does them, talk to me about what drills mean in the shooting community, because I think they can be misused.
Yeah, you know, and there's different types of drills. There's, you know, skill development drills, and then there's skill assessment drills in a way. And, you know, I think sometimes you have to keep the drills in the context that you know, that they are used for. So, for example, Tom's well known for his casino drill. And what the casino drill is to do what is to introduce people to the concept of automaticity in your gun handling so that it frees up the bandwidth to figure out the problem in front of you and a changing landscape. A lot of times we forget as shooters that, you know, we shoot at a berm, we shoot at a backstop, we shoot at a bullet trap. In the real world, Walmart parking lot, 10 o'clock at night, there is no bullet, you know, so and what's going on around you may be changing, ever evolving, and you will be reacting to that. And so Tom's thing is that's what the casino drill is an example of Tom trying to get people going down that path. Problem is that sometimes people start gaming it and they shoot it so much that they get really good at the drill itself as opposed to the underlying concept behind it, the why behind that drill.
Yes.
And so you got guys, and it's an amazing amount of skill to shoot the casino drill in 9 seconds. And there's people out there doing it. But Tom will be the first one to tell you, once you get faster than 15, 16 seconds on that drill, you need to change something up to give yourself novel stimuli. You know what I'm saying? To give yourself something else to think about, to introduce some stress to you, to introduce something else that makes you have to think, because that's what that drill is all about, is thinking with the gun in your hand. But I agree. There's guys who take other drills, you know, and, you know, when you get a drill, you know, and you use it, please use it for what it is designed for. Find out about it. Don't just pick it up from somebody else and go. It can be fun. If you want to do it for fun, that's fine. But find out what the drill, who designed the drill and why. And you'll find that you'll get a lot more out of it if you do that, I think.
Oh, 100%. I could give you a lot of examples. One of the things that Mike and I have been doing is our firearms instructor development course. We've been teaching that for almost 10 years.
Trying to catch that course, man. I want that course so bad. His book is smoking, by the way.
Well, thank you.
I really, it's when people ask me, it's one of the books that I write on the top of the board when we do instructor development classes, man. Is get Mike's book. That's a great book. Yeah.
I wrote a chapter in that and edited the book for him. So
yes, you did.
I'm glad to hear that.
Great work for you guys on that. Great work.
Thank you. I'm very proud of that course. It's been something that we've always wanted to do, and finally have been able to do it a lot. Got a couple of dates coming up this year, but right now they're closed, Leo only groups. But if we get one on there, man, I'll make sure you get an invite there.
Please, man, I'm going to take that course, man. Can't wait.
Johnny King says, check out Officer Dean Killer out of Georgia. Good visual on not getting violent at the right time. Man, he is spot on. That's a hard one to watch.
That was a hard one to watch. And we actually use that in combative pistol. And we draw a lot of lessons out of that. And the FBI fight in Miami in 1986. We use those two as examples. And we'll juxtapose Dean Killer with Lance Thomas, you know what I'm saying, and his videos and the difference in mindset. And exposing people to the Lance Thomas mindset through those videos, I think helps people a lot.
Yeah. And, you know, this is something John Hearn and I were talking about the other day. And I think you were a cop in the same, but the ATM model, you know, ass, tail, make.
Yes.
And once we've slidden away from that, I think my fear is we're going to get more Dean Killer. And I mean, no disrespect to Officer Dean Killer. He paid the highest price that
he did.
Any warrior can pay, and he's taught a lot of people in his sacrifice.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to honor his memory is for other police officers not to, and people, civilians, not to go through and experience what he experienced. But yeah, that's definitely a cautionary tale there. In fact, recently I was training up in North Georgia in the very county that happened in. The guy was like,
Really?
that happened in this county. Yeah,
Oh.
it was crazy. So
Gregory is on. Good morning, Gregory. Glad to have you on, sir. Semper Fi, brother. Let's see here. I got some more questions for you, sir. When you look at, I'm going to shift gears from the shooting community to maybe some of the things that are going on in our weird America of 2024. When you see movies like this new A24 movie that's coming out, I think in March, entitled Civil War, or maybe the Obama movie that Netflix put out, Leave the World Behind. Some people call it predictive programming or whatever. What do you see there?
my fear, because and I thought about it as you said, changes in law enforcement, over the years, and Tom will discuss how law enforcement has changed. If things get bad, then we look for tougher cops, and as things get better, then we want our cops to ease off. And I'm concerned with what I'm seeing going into the law enforcement. Are the latest generation, very nice people, some of them, but won't have the kind of, I worry that they won't have the kind of grit that they need to deal with the criminal element, because if you haven't been exposed to it, you really don't know just how cruel and mean and harsh people can be. But to that point, my fear is, are there forces that are, I think America is at its best when we're all together, moving together, one nation, working together towards a common goal, fighting tyranny, things like that we've done in wars and stuff, and here and abroad. And when I see people talking about divisiveness, it scares me.
Yep.
And and so I'm always, when like I said, I saw the movie, I saw the preview like everybody else of the movie, and I called my son and I'm like, man, I hope this isn't people trying to plant seeds as opposed to, so I don't, I'm not sophisticated enough to know, what's behind things like that. But I do know that it scares me when I see, it feels like us as a country, we're a lot more divided than we've been in a long time. And, I'm a little afraid that if we don't pull it together, man, we might end up in some really, really rough times.
I think you're right. And I don't see people, like here's an off ramp, right? I mean, we're on the highway speeding down the tracks, and I'm looking for the person that's willing to speak truth to power and say, hey man, there's an off ramp to this. We don't have to go down this road. But I see it more of not a red state, blue state, or this ethnicity or that. I see it more of a rural versus urban.
Yes.
And
Yes.
the urban enclaves of America are kind of taking America in one direction, and perhaps rural places like you and I live, we're wanting perhaps another direction. And I just hope we can get it together soon, man. If not, it goes nowhere good.
I agree. Having said that, though, I mean, if you live in an urban environment, I know I won't. Simply because it's just some of the way the decisions are made, and some of the culture of what I'm seeing, now in some places. Like I spent a lot of time in Memphis, man, and.
Mm-hmm.
And Memphis has always been a wild place. You were there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I mean, it's like, it seems to be getting much, much worse. And I see that pattern kind of all over to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what's going on. Sometimes I wonder if some of our other countries that are working against us through social media and stuff like that, man, to create division amongst us and to get into kids' heads and teach them, not to respect parents and things like that. Then again, I say that stuff, then my kids tell me I'm old, so I don't know.
I try to temper that too, because I got 4 kids, man, and they're all adults. But I try to be like, is this the way that it's always been? But then I look at like John Hearn's statistics now, of course. And not every agency is reporting too. That's
Right.
Another thing.
Right.
We're not looking at a whole picture. We're seeing just a piece of the picture. And then I don't think we've ever had the politically motivated prosecutors like Doug mentioned earlier. I don't think we've ever been in a time where there are that many of them out there to bring some of the frivolous charges that they bring. And of course, that just increases the divisiveness. Will Parker says, my opinion is Civil War is far scarier than a war with another country on our own soil. I
Yes.
100% agree with him. You know, I've mentioned this before on the show. Uh, I'm from East Tennessee. You know, we've always been Republicans, and you know, my ancestor, one of my ancestors, you know, he William Brown, at 45 years old, jumped on a horse and was part of the Tennessee Mounted Infantry as a Union soldier. And then you have another one of my ancestors burned bridges for Lincoln to try to get the Union Army down here. So I'm not interested in a Civil War 2.0, man. It's a scary, scary situation. I mean, because uh, Looney McDaniel, my great grandfather, he died in a Confederate prison. I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in that at all. So,
We see. I think I was a writer I was listening to not too long ago. He says that we, as Americans, sometimes have a skewed vision of what Civil War is like because we had our country broke into two countries, fought it. Our country broke into two countries,
mhm,
fought a war, and then came back together,
yep,
pulled back together. What Civil War looks like in most other places is a balkanization. You know what I'm
correct.
saying? Where rule of law goes away, and then you got pockets of, you know, fighting and pockets of group of people going after each other, and it's a lot more chaotic. And he says that I don't think that because we've got this picture of Civil War that we're not as vigilant against the other what Civil War looks like in the rest of the world as maybe we should be. You know,
Well, and what leads to civil war is the balkanization. You can have the balkanization afterward.
right,
You also can have it before, which just
right.
furthers attention. And I would submit, Ak, and you can tell me if I'm smoking something funny, but I think we're balkanizing right now at an accelerated
That's
rate.
what it seems like is happening.
Yeah.
Really, culturally speaking, you know, and then I think we've got, like I said, we've got influences, man. You know, we got people. You know, we got other countries who a lot more authoritarian than we are, and they are, you know, pushing an agenda here. You know, and I think
Yeah.
I mean, because there's different ways to fight a war. I think maybe the war is going on already, and it's just being
Hmm.
fought, you know, on our cell phones, and we're not paying attention, and we don't know. So,
Man, you're right. And I talked about this a couple of shows ago, so I don't want to say the stats because I want to brutal mess them up. But Meta, and I'm no friend of Meta, even though we're using it as a platform to have our conversation this morning. Uh, Zuckerberg can zuck off as far as I'm concerned, but he'll probably shut down the feed from that. But anyway, I say that, but Meta stopped, I want to say 700 something websites that were Chinese proxies that were
wow,
using to sow division. And we've already caught the Russians troll farms, you know, that they'll have a Black Lives Matter protest that wasn't organically sprung up. It was just,
right,
it was something that the
right,
Russians, and then
right,
right across the street would be a Blue Lives Matter, uh, you know, they would create these things
right,
just to create problems. I mean,
right,
our enemies are not stupid, man, and they
right.
they they know how to play on our little divisions.
Right. And there's guys out there, you know, and you know some of their names who multinational types that make money when countries come apart. You know what I'm saying? And so that's just what they do, you know. I remember
Yeah.
one time seeing a video, man, right before protests in one of the, you know, Pacific Northwest cities, and it was and I was like, this is right. And my son, we were looking at it, and it was just like a big crate of rocks. And I'm like, where does that come from?
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, who put that there? Because that took some money. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah.
that's not,
When
you
pallets or
know,
bricks are already waiting for you. And I'm sure both sides, and whether it's Antifa and the cops, are both looking at the pile of bricks like, who put this shit out here?
Here, right? You know what I'm saying? Got a pile of bricks right before the protest. I mean, you know, so I don't know. Like I said,
I'll tell you, man, I loved your. I'm gonna steal that phrase. You know that the battle is right now going on the phone. You know, my son. I don't know if you know this, Ak. He's cybersecurity research scientist at a national laboratory,
nice.
and you know most of what he does is classified, so can't even share it with me. But it's a war, man. It's 24/7 onslaught on, and it may not work on older guys like you and I. No disrespect
Right,
to you,
right, right.
but
No,
you know
no, we're
we're
the
of
same age, man. No, yeah,
yeah, exactly.
yes,
We're of the same generation, but
yeah,
our kids, man, they're fertile for this. A lot of times I'll have to pause with my kids and go, look, what you're seeing is not normal
right,
because they think it's normalized. And I'm
right.
like, hey, this is not normal.
No,
Understand that?
no,
Like, it's not, it hasn't always been like this. I'm like,
no,
hell no, it ain't been like this.
no, no. It hasn't been. You know, and let me stop. I just found out yesterday I can't buy any more Aunt Jemima syrup, man, and
Oh God.
I'm heartbroken about that. I'm not going any deeper than that. It's just I don't know, huh?
You know, I'm okay. I don't want to pull you down into this, but we were talking about this over the weekend because I got Aunt Jemima in the house, and every Saturday is waffle, and Dad makes waffles, and the
Right,
kids, my adult kids, come over who live close by, and I
right,
make waffles for the whole family.
right.
And they're like, "What in the hell, man?" Her family is proud as hell that their great great granny or whatever was on this bottle, and why are they doing this? And who is they that are doing it? It just makes no sense, man.
Well,
Nothing
what?
good comes from that.
But Rich, if you look in other countries where cultural revolutions happened, that was a big part of it.
Mhm.
That was a big part of it. You have to break down the past so that you can shape the minds in the future.
It's
And
it's it's done it everywhere, and that leads to one of the questions Tony asked is how many points are we up to, Rich? And I've got a point system, and right now we're up to 7 points for when I think things are going to start breaking to a point where Rich Brown and his family may need to take an extended overseas vacation until things blow over. Because yeah, I'm telling you, man, if you study, to your point, if you study genocide and civil war and internal conflict in other countries, there's a playbook. I think there's 10 stages of genocide,
mm,
and in this country we've done it before. We've done it with the Native Americans. We've done it
mm,
with other things, and not that we went all the way to genocide, but we certainly did to the Japanese Americans when we interred them during World War II. We went right up to the line,
mhm,
disenfranchised an entire group of Americans, and it led to the Korematsu decision,
mhm.
where they can still do that. So I am worried about that.
Yeah, and I was speaking to it. I was watching something recently where a guy was talking about um, guys who you know do ops in other world and other nations to kind of get them over to our side and things like that. He was saying some of the things that he saw that they would do in other countries, they see being done here.
Yep.
And like I said, if we don't have a historical perspective, we don't have a historical anchoring, then unfortunately, like I said, because I mean, I the way this thing is going, I'm not, I'm 54 years old, and I'm not mad about it. It's like, I remember my great grandmother died, and she said, I'm getting out of here. You guys' world is crazy. And I'm like, shit, that was in the early 70s. Yes.
That's right. It's gotten crazier, Grandma. I'm gonna tell you that. Let's get some comments here, sir. It says Donald Green says we've had a good run. Will the Republic still be here for our grand and great grandchildren? I certainly hope so. Sarah May brings up Texas, and we're gonna touch on that here in just a moment. Tony says as long as they keep us fighting each other, the less time we have to face the real enemy. Boy, that is true. And let's see what Doug says. Doug says we should have a national repository for crime stats, use of force stats, and citizen complaints against the police. The technology and the resources are readily available, but for some reason, the federal government refuses to enact such laws. These should be a requirement for any law enforcement entity to legally operate. Just my opinion, but I think if the true numbers were known, then it would blow huge holes in the narrative that some have. And that goes back to your point. And I love the fact that you're teaching this, Ak. You said that when I show people like, okay, here's the homicides, but where's attempted homicide? Oh, suddenly it's not being used. But look at this cohort of what'd you say, 3,000
Yeah, if you got
aggravated assaults with a firearm?
Nashville, Metropolitan Davidson County has at least 3,000 aggravated assaults with a weapon every year. And I think people don't realize, we have to explain them, for example, that one of the reasons why homicide rates are so low here is because of medical advances, especially since the GWAT.
Yep.
But if it weren't for Vanderbilt, you know what I'm saying, there'd be a
Right.
lot more homicides. So
That's a fact. And Dr. Fuller and I have talked about that a lot. It's the vascular surgeons and things of this nature because ammunition technology has gone leaps and bounds from what it was.
yeah,
We wouldn't, if we had the 9mm ballistics that we have these days, the 40 caliber probably would have never existed. And
exactly. Yes,
that's a
yes,
whole nother conversation. But
right.
the ballistics we can get out of a 9mm round are incredible, which has prompted the doctors and surgeons to do some amazing things to save lives. Thank God for that. Um, How do you, and this is kind of, well, let's go to Texas before I ask that final question. Alec, what are your thoughts on this border battle down in Texas? What do you think about it? Is that a migrant invasion? Are you even watching it close enough, Alec, to have thoughts on it, sir?
I've been watching it and watching some YouTube stuff, man, and it's just I get so scared because I don't know what I'm watching, who's putting out what, and everything. What I do know is I like the fact that we are 50 states. I'm a
Yep.
man who left New York because I didn't like the culture, and I like the culture here, and I don't understand what the issue is. I right now, currently, from what I'm seeing, it's like, well, if Texas wants to put borders up to stop people from coming across, and they have to deal with it, why do we have a problem with that? There is a way to become a citizen of the United States, and why don't they just? Yeah, I don't know. So you're afraid to. Me, I'm afraid to talk until I've studied to really, have
Yeah.
an informed decision. I mean, informed opinion on it. But for what it looks like on the outside, from what I'm seeing, I don't understand why we would want to tear down things that prevent, especially I saw something on these videos that I didn't know existed. Like, I'm watching people from all over the world.
Yes,
You
sir.
know what I'm saying? I'm thinking, we tend to think, okay, there's people from South America coming up. But now I'm seeing, they're saying, no, there's people from Africa, there's people
That's
from
right.
Haiti, there's people from China, there's people, what I'm saying? And people from India. And so now they just fly into South America and walk into the country. And I'm like, that's not even the narrative of the poor person being oppressed by the cartel who comes up, to get away from that. This is something completely different.
Yeah.
And so yeah. I don't, at this point now, from what I can see, I don't see why the feds bother Texas. If Texas wants to go and prevent people from coming across this border from another country, they didn't, why I don't understand why we don't support them.
Well, and they're stopping the line from. It's not just a Texas, but you said several things that I completely agree with. One of which is most Americans have this idea of it's a poor Mexican family hoping for something better, and maybe that's what the New York Eric Adams there in New York thought, and the governor of New York thought when they, a couple of years ago, were like, "Hey, we want you here. Please come. Oh my God, yeah, you have a place here." And then, of course, once they got a taste of a few 10,000, thank you, Governor Abbott, they went, "Oh no, no, no! Please stop coming." That poor mayor of Chicago man's having nervous breakdowns in the hospital. I mean, that's what when a couple of buses full of thousands of migrants show up, every one of them wanting a job, which they can't work. So now they need services just to survive. And it is an invasion because these are military age males, man. These ain't families. These ain't, a woman and her kids, fleeing a really destructive environment. This is military age males, and a lot of them are from China, Uzbekistan. What in the world are they coming here for? And I hate to be tinfoil hatish, but I don't think it's for nothing good.
And we, so yeah, I don't see how we can. I don't know any country that doesn't secure its borders. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
So,
In order to
I
have
mean,
a
if
country, man,
I
you
would
got to have a
take all
border.
of the cultural things out and all of the economic, it's just a matter of national security. How do we address that? And,
Yeah. Well, Will says millions of men coming and leaving their families behind. They are traveling to war. Well, I hope not, but maybe so. Mark says, and Mark is in Australia. He says, "Good morning, gentlemen. It would be great if we could get some spotters in Texas to give us some reliable information." I agree with you because I think everybody has an agenda these days. You watch mainstream media, man. You have to watch it with a jaundiced eye. Like, where are they trying to take me with this information? I've talked about it before. You got to triangulate the news. I will wake up and probably I'll check Fox, then I'll check Al Jazeera, then I'll check CNN, and I'll check Reuters, then I'll check the BBC, and I'll have to. What kernel of truth
right,
is here?
right.
That's a damn shame,
It's a
right?
lot of work, man.
Yeah. Let's see here. Ted says Texas is a small section of the border with the bridge open. Propaganda is real. Sarah says there's a video of a Hamas terrorist coming across saying, "You will know my name soon enough." It was beyond chilling. Did you see that?
I heard about it. I didn't see it, but I heard about it on one of the news things. I didn't actually. I'm gonna go watch that video today. But yeah, stuff like that, man. I mean,
It's a problem for all of us. It's not just a Texas problem, man.
I
It's an
agree.
everybody problem.
I agree.
And that's the beauty of shipping those migrants up to Martha's Vineyard, which they had them on a private plane out of there that day.
It's so easy to say we're a sanctuary city, then it's something else when you actually have to do that work, And
Yeah,
as you and I know, when it comes to dealing with homeless people, it's a much more bigger, it's much bigger problem. I get friends of mine who decent people got a big heart, and they're just homeless people, and they have a they have a picture in their mind of what this person is, and how they got to be in that homeless situation. And I'll tell them, well, the guy who lost his job and this and that and the other, that's the exception. You know what I'm saying? Most of them are drug addicts. You know what I'm saying?
correct.
And why? How do I know? I'm down there, dealing with them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so they don't often they don't know. And people play on that. So
Yes, they do. So with all that being said, how do you, or how should we, as our self-preservation, preparedness, gun community, whatever you want to call it, prepare for the potential coming chaos in America? How do we do that?
form your alliances. I'm not a big guy you know, I don't really believe in putting on some backpack and walking out in the middle of nowhere if things go bad. What's going to get people through those times is community, strong community, being with like-minded people. And the first thing is, I was talking to a friend of mine not too long ago. He said, "Man, my kids don't even want to, think like that. How do you talk to them?" I said, "Well, I've always told my kids, it's great now, but it may not always be like this. And we need to have a parking space, William April, in your head for, what could go down if, things start to break down." So I'm not sure exactly how that looks like with the time. We know that it's a matter of when and not if, what I'm saying. But it,
Mhm.
could be a couple more decades, but I don't know what's going on. But what you need to be doing in this time when it's not happening is forming those alliances with those people and coming together and, getting the proper skills and getting the proper, equipment or gear or whatever it is you need to do. And, you know, finding people with diverse backgrounds and stuff who have different skill sets they can bring to your team and stuff, and just having a, like we tell people, it comes to self-defense and personal protection, have a plan. you know um John Hearn told me about a book by Marilyn Lawrence Gonzalez years ago, Deep Survival. It's an excellent book.
Yeah.
And basically is, have a plan and be flexible in your plan and put your team together now, because the time to do that is not when it happens. I remember what got me thinking along those lines heavily was two things. One, we got 80 inches of snow in 8 hours in Buffalo, and we were literally snowbound, kind of like what happened this past winter. And I started seeing just how quickly stores emptied, when the trucks don't run. And the other one was like a lot of people, was Hurricane Katrina, watching that thing,
Mhm.
and going, this, you know, this can flip rather quickly.
Yeah.
And
Dig in. If guys and gals out there listening to Ak and I this morning, dig into the Hurricane Katrina, man. That is a hell on earth. What
yes,
happened at the Astrodome, and it is unbelievable that it happened here in America. The fact that a lot of patients were euthanized in hospitals, they were euthanized in nursing homes, and it's unfathomable that it happened here. So learn from those lessons. I was a regional manager for disaster preparedness and government ops here in this for the state of Tennessee, and I was a deputy director of a lot of disaster relief operations. And I'm here to tell you, man, it's a lesson. One of the ways we did that is we started this thing called the Pillowcase Project here in the state of Tennessee. So my volunteers would go around to the schools and they would have pillowcases for every kid. And we went off the idea of build a kit and have a plan. And teaching kids, like, what do you need to have in your pillowcase? So when mom and dad says it's time to roll, you can grab the pillowcase that you of your preparedness items and run. So it's teaching this next generation preparedness is incredibly important. It's not all about the gun, is it?
no, no. In fact, the gun, like personal defense, we tell people, if you have to use the gun, you screwed up. So
Yeah.
if you do it right, properly, the gun is not something that you should hopefully have to use. So no, it's not. A lot of times guys think they're getting ready just by buying a bunch of guns, and no, there's a lot more to it than that. Community, community, community.
I 100% agree with you. And that's one of the things that, I've been blessed to be a part of with the American Warrior Society, is the community that we built around uh, this. I mean, just some of the most amazing people I've got to meet. And we're fortunate to have members across the country. I'm sorry, across the world that recognize and want to keep their families safe. And that's what it's all about. And I applaud you, Ak, for what you're doing out there, teaching the good stuff to people, keeping them and their families safer. You're all making a difference, brother. And I appreciate everything you're doing, man.
Thank you for that, brother. Oh, something else. Yugoslavia.
Yeah.
Yeah. People study that thing. That thing is a study, and how that went down, and how that balkanized and came apart. I find fascinating. So yeah, just went through it. Popped in my head. Sorry, man.
No, dude, that's great.
Yeah.
I've talked about that before because people forget that we just had the Winter Olympics there like a year prior.
Right. Exactly. And then the country went away. You know what I'm saying? It fell completely apart, man.
It
Yeah.
was a first world, beautiful European city that fell into anarchy and chaos and was a bombed out nothing. And
Yeah.
people have a confirmation bias here in America that, that can't happen here. Brother, it has happened here. What are you talking about?
Yes.
And I talking to my wife that we were sitting in the jacuzzi and enjoying ourselves as middle-aged people often do. And I was talking about it. I said, because we just got back from overseas, and I said, babe, the Union Army has rolled through here before, slashing and burning everything in their wake all the way to Savannah. And, one of the first people killed in Atlanta during Tecumseh Sherman's bombing campaign was a guy named Solomon Phillips. He was a free black man who owned his own barbershop downtown Atlanta. And he heard the firing, walked out to see what the hell was going on, and a Union cannonball blew him to pieces. And, a church I used to go to has a Union cannonball on the side of the church that they just left there as a freaking reminder. Yes, in Greenville, Tennessee.
Wow.
It's a reminder that it can happen here. It has happened here. Please don't think that it cannot again. If we don't choose to have an off-ramp, if we can't work together as a community and not let people divide us like they're trying to do, man, it's going to happen here.
I agree.
Ak, thank you for being on today, sir. I've kept you on almost an hour and a half, brother. Where can folks train with you? Where do they need to go?
Citizenssafety.com is where our calendar is. I am also affiliated with Rangemaster. So this year I'm doing a combative pistol for Tom in different locations around the country. Please come check us out. Me and Tiff have our Gateway Instructor program, which we teach guys how to teach newbies. And it seems like, that's easy, but there are some nuances, especially dealing with gun culture 2.0 and people unlike us who didn't grow up with firearms and literally are terrified of them and terrified of the gun culture because of all the lies they've been told to a certain extent. So we key in on that and trying to get guys up and running so that they can do really good stuff at the grassroots level, because guys, that's how we're going to get people over into the Second Amendment thing. I look at us like we are on the island and we need to go grab more Americans, because if we don't, this thing can go away. So, do what we can to get out there and learn and bring more and more people into this thing that we love. So citizensafety.com, rangemaster.com. If you got any questions, you can hit us up at info@citizensafety.com. And, we're happy to help anybody in any way that we can.
All right. Gerald says, I have to rewind. It was a great show. Yeah. This is one you might want to listen to multiple times because Ak was laying some knowledge down today. Thank you so much for being on, sir.
Thank you for having me, brother. It means a lot. I'm a big fan of the show, and I'm glad I finally was you finally invited me, man. So thank you.
It was an honor and privilege, man. And I got, will you tell me right now, man, you're going to come on for round 2?
Oh, without a doubt, man. Just
all right.
Let me know. We'll come back. Happy to.
All right. Awesome. Guys and gals out there, Warrior Nation, remember the fight is coming. Be ready.